I do.
It was four clips of the episode, and you can see in the images he wasn't even subscribed to the channel.
Yeah, but he watched your show.
No, he didn't. He watched one guy.
Yeah, have you ever went to those time codes? He was highlighting specific, and I won't name the guest from the guest.
But
like,
he did watch your show.
Like this is
so you're saying he watched an episode?
Smear.
Sure, but do you understand
come
why?
on.
And he posted about
who was that one guy who watched Majority Report and then commented on what Sam did?
Why do you think that? But this was a neo-Nazi. Why do you think your content appeals to neo-Nazis?
Are you kidding me right now?
In today's video, Emma Vigeland takes Tim Pool head-on during his own podcast as their discussion on crime, media spin, and political division sparks tension right from the start, and Emma pushes past Tim Pool's usual MAGA-leaning narrative by backing her points with solid facts about inequality, crime patterns, and how biased media shape the story, and every time Tim tries drifting into culture war territory, Emma brings the focus right back to real-world evidence with firm, clear responses. So let's dive in and see how Emma Vigeland ultimately shuts Tim Pool down on his own platform.
I've asked you, we have here, I literally just pulled up detransition Wikipedia. We pulled up this study that shows that without intervention, desistance rates are from 61 to 98%.
And here I have general acceptance of standards of care. The overwhelming weight of medical authority supports treatment of transgender patients with GnRH agonists and cross-sex hormones in appropriate circumstances. Organizations who have formally recognized this include American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, American Academy of Family Physicians, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, American College of Physicians, American Medical Association, American Pediatric Association, dozens and
Remember
dozens
when doctors
of
said smoking was good for you? You're not citing science. You're citing government approval.
No, I'm not. I am citing
and that's fine.
What does the government have to do with it? These are medical organizations.
Okay, sure. Fair point. You're citing medical organizations, despite the fact that there have been numerous instances throughout history, in fact, basically all of them, where we've been like, hey, we were wrong about that. Like, maybe we shouldn't drink mercury if you get syphilis. But what I'm referring to specifically is if there is no intervention of a trans child, desistance rates are from 61 to 98%, showing the majority of kids are better off not receiving.
No, look, I mean, you're on
blockers.
detransition Wikipedia. I just listed a list of dozen.
Again, he mentioned desistance, not detransition. This is like very important that we nail down what we're talking about.
Yeah, right. What I'm saying is, if you have a trans child or a child who is suffering from gender identity disorder or dysphoria, and you do nothing, there is a 61 to 98% chance they age out of it and grow up and are happy and fine.
That's made up.
It's literally right there. What are you talking about?
On Wikipedia.
At the point of puberty.
No, I pulled up the NIH and you said you can pull up anything. Yeah, so here you go. NIH.gov.
Tim.
Here you go.
Tim.
Are you happy?
Tim.
NIH.gov.
Deal with what I just said about the level of medical organizations. You're saying that they're all wrong and that you have some sort of like special knowledge that you can supersede their expertise.
No, he's not. You're cherry picking American
and
organizations.
And you're making the appeal to authority.
First of all, I just cited one from the Netherlands, but American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Child and
Appeal to authority. Keep doing it.
I mean,
but not even that.
But I'm not in a medical authority, and neither are you. So why wouldn't you appeal to the authority? All I can do is point to a study and say, "Wow, if this study is true, I'm opposed to this." Right?
But there's also all these European organizations that are getting rid of this specific practice that he's focusing on, which is the puberty blockers, and like for some reason they're not on your list.
No,
which is
we are properly assessing when intervention is appropriate here. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
But why would they suspend in these better healthcare systems in Europe? Why would they suspend this specific practice that we're arguing about?
I mean, you listed Sweden and Finland. They've just elected far-right governments, but
I mean,
but anyway, like again, this is what I'm interested in talking about in terms of politics. I want to create a more equitable society for people. We should have socialized healthcare, Medicare for all. You should talk about that more on your program. You say you're in favor of it. I haven't really seen. I haven't seen much.
When you guys cherry pick stuff to talk about music or whatever,
we should talk about ending child poverty. I mean, it's funny. You should talk about ending child poverty.
But you could have talked about my position on universal healthcare any one of these times. You never do. Why? It's not going to get traffic for you.
Well, I mean, you don't clip anything about universal healthcare. You should focus more on it, and then we would focus on it.
Watching Emma Vigeland clash with Tim Pool really shows the contrast between someone relying on the established medical consensus and someone arguing from surface-level claims and half-understood citations. And Emma's arguments feel stronger when you step back and look at the larger scientific landscape, where major medical organizations in the U.S. and around the world have spent decades reviewing research on gender dysphoria and forming their positions through long-term clinical evaluation, rather than online chatter. And while Tim repeatedly points to changes in a few European countries as if they overturn the entire field, Emma notes that those nations didn't ban gender-affirming care but shifted toward more structured psychological assessments while still acknowledging that puberty blockers remain a safe, reversible option when used under proper guidance. And she highlights that groups like the WHO, the Endocrine Society, and PATH continue to support access to gender-affirming treatment because the overall evidence still shows better mental health outcomes when care is supervised by professionals. And her response to Tim's claim that most kids simply grow out of it is important because the older studies he keeps referencing grouped all gender nonconforming children together rather than focusing on those diagnosed under modern standards. And when you look at updated research using current criteria, the picture is far more accurate than the outdated numbers Tim relies on, turning those old findings into misleading talking points. And throughout the exchange, Emma keeps pulling the conversation back to the real issues of healthcare access, fairness, and listening to qualified experts instead of fear-driven narratives, which is why Tim's arguments start falling apart once she brings actual data into the discussion.
Like,
what we try to do
when are we going to be
is
like, for no reason,
time,
let's just make a universal healthcare thing?
What we try to do in real time is correct right-wing lies, whether it's you or Dave Rubin or Steven Crowder. We do talk about abortion a lot.
Yeah.
We do.
What's my abortion position?
I'm not sure.
Why? You've not watched any of the 8,000 segments we've done on it?
I do know that you called that 10-year-old case a hoax, a political hoax.
The political maneuvers around it to change the law was a hoax.
Yeah.
Sure. So, well, how do you not know my position on abortion? I mean, you watch the show. You watch at any point. You can see the arguments we have.
I don't have a ton of time to watch all your
show. You specifically covered his episode with the serfs where they talked about it in depth. So it's weird that you don't.
Well, reiterate your abortion position for me, and I'll respond to it. Okay. In what way?
I think Roe v. Wade was the right decision.
Okay.
I think that life should be mandated, should be protected under the Constitution at the federal level, and that it probably does make sense for the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade, but that means Congress needs to codify it.
Okay, but that's not going to happen, and that's because we don't have
that's a different question.
Because we need filibuster reform. So I'm not really interested in process. I'm interested in outcomes as we get back to, again, the differences that we clearly have here. I don't really care who imposes the right to abortion in this country. I just care that we have a right to abortion in this country, and we don't.
Well, right. Yeah, I think at first when Roe v. Wade was overturned, I thought that it was probably good it would go to legislation because the Supreme Court arbitrarily setting law is probably dangerous. But however, since then, I've looked at it and said, it's a 14th Amendment question, the right to life. And, looking back on that now and understanding Roe v. Wade actually was a pretty good decision. I think now at this point, you'd need some kind of codification. I don't know how the Supreme Court's going to go back on it, but that's a political conversation, not a personal perspective on abortion. So my view is pre-viability, it's individual discretion. Post-viability, it's probably going to require some kind of, depending on the circumstances.
Where do you draw the line of viability?
Can the baby survive on its own?
Okay. Well, 90% of abortions happen in the first trimester, which is the first 12 weeks. Yeah. 99% happen in the first 20 weeks. The rest that happen, the 1% that you're talking about, which is overrepresented constantly for fear-mongering purposes, is the 1% that happen when the life of the mother is in danger or there's a issue with the fetus.
Well, there's no question.
So there's no need to parse and draw arbitrary lines because what that does is it essentially, especially with rape and incest exemptions, which you speak about, it makes it seem like...
I'm not in favor of incest exemptions.
Okay. The one that we spoke about earlier, okay? I'm not even speaking about your specific opinion about this. I'm talking generally about the notions of abortion. You can't have rape and incest exemptions because it takes so long to prove those cases that it would completely nullify the need for an abortion because as the pregnancy is going along, you would be unable to perform the abortion in the time that it takes.
When Emma pushes back in this debate, she's drawing on realities that have been clear for decades because the outcomes of progressive policy consistently improve people's everyday lives. And when the conversation shifts to abortion, Tim tries to treat it like a technical debate, while the real-world data is straightforward as countries that protect legal, accessible abortion and support strong reproductive health care see lower maternal mortality, fewer dangerous underground procedures, and healthier long-term results for families. And the United States already has one of the highest maternal mortality rates among developed nations, with states that impose harsh abortion bans reporting even worse outcomes, which isn't a matter of ideology but basic public health facts. And Emma's point about universal health care follows the same pattern, since countries with national health systems like Canada, the UK, France, and the Nordic nations spend less per person than the US, yet consistently achieve better health indicators overall. And what makes this even more striking is that many of these countries have conservative parties that still defend universal coverage as a normal part of life rather than a fringe left-wing idea, because globally it's considered a standard expectation. And when Emma talks about keeping the government from interfering in private medical decisions, her argument reflects the views of most Americans, as polls repeatedly show that the majority, including many independents and moderate conservatives, believe decisions about pregnancy should remain between patients and doctors rather than politicians or media commentators. And while Tim keeps circling hypothetical situations, Emma stays rooted in what actually happens in real communities, as her points align with the evidence. And she's ultimately showing that when you trust people, invest in healthcare, and prevent political overreach in medical choices, society becomes healthier and safer.
To prove that kind of stuff. So when that stuff is put into legislation, what it does is it waters down and makes the public seem like, oh, we're not so barbaric. That's why we should not be intervening in what doctors and patients are doing. I want people to be empowered over their own health care. Same thing with trans kids.
So you disagree with
same thing with abortion. Sorry?
Do you disagree with Roe v. Wade in that regard?
Well, no. I want there to be an abortion.
Would you prefer Roe v. Wade stood?
Of course.
So then you would be against abortion after a certain amount of time.
I mean, Roe v. Wade essentially created the viability standard, right?
So then you have a 14th Amendment question, whereas you would need some kind of government intervention post viability.
Yeah, I believe that doctors should be able to make these determinations, and it should not be. We should have a right to an abortion broadly, and doctors can make a decision.
To be clear,
real quick, I think you're in favor of the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
No, I'm not, because I would never want to overturn something to go backwards and then bring it up to the legislature, where we have crazies and Republican nut jobs in the Senate, and there's a filibuster that doesn't provide us with the ability to codify it.
Because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, you now have states like Colorado removing restrictions.
No. This isn't accurate. So Roe versus Wade protected at a constitutional level up to the second trimester for elective abortions, and then afterwards it was up to the states. So Colorado could have extended this prior to. In fact, Andrew Cuomo did this before. So just to clarify that.
Okay, never mind. I stand corrected. I thought that it was because I remember reading what was the guy's name? He wrote about 14th Amendment kicks in upon viability. And then you have a constitutional right to life and all of these things, and there's questions around that.
Colorado may have passed that law in response to Roe versus Wade, but they weren't prohibited from doing so before. It's because Roe versus Wade says at this point, the states have no issue. It's a constitutional issue. And then third trimester, which is why Roe versus Wade constitutionally is a ridiculous decision, they're like, it's a states' rights issue. Because, the Constitution obviously delegates the trimesters in the 57th Amendment somewhere.
And again, Tim, the reality is I don't you've been perfectly nice to me here. I don't really care about you personally. I care when you say things that are harmful and wrong. What? Like the hoax statement about
that wasn't wrong. That was an opinion.
It was wrong. It was completely factually inaccurate.
It's not factually inaccurate.
You called it a hoax because you know that your audience is going to feed into it, and then you parse it later so you have plausible deniability about it.
But specifically what I said was, and we talk about it in depth. I think the issue is just you don't watch the show. To be fair, I don't watch Majority Report. But if I'm not gonna come out here and be like, you said this one time, this one thing. I've not watched the show, so I don't know exactly what you're talking about. But I said, the idea that you would take a tragic circumstance like this and then create a political story, put it out to the super PACs to try and change laws, that's a hoax.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. How about the fact that you called the
grooming
shooter in the neo-Nazi Texas shooter who watched your program, you called that a false flag?
Because you don't even know anything about that story.
I do.
It was four clips of the episode, and you can see in the images he wasn't even subscribed to the channel.
Yeah, but he watched your show.
No, he didn't. He watched one guy.
Yeah, have you ever went to those time codes? He was highlighting specific, and I won't name the guest from the guest.
But he did watch your show.
Like this is
so you're saying he watched an episode?
Smear.
Sure, but do you understand
come
why?
on.
And he posted about
who was that one guy who watched Majority Report and then commented on what Sam did?
Why do you think that? But this was a neo-Nazi. Why do you think your content appeals to neo-Nazis?
Are you kidding me right now?
No, I'm just wondering why you think that.
What really becomes clear is how closely Emma's arguments match what medical and legal professionals have been warning about for years. Because when she challenges the idea of inserting government procedures into abortion decisions, she's reinforcing the same position held by the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, which has repeatedly cautioned that political involvement in pregnancy care creates dangerous delays, inaccurate diagnoses, and avoidable harm. And this isn't hypothetical, since states with strict restrictions have already reported cases where women were denied treatment for miscarriages or ectopic pregnancies because doctors feared legal consequences. And the debate about abortions after viability is another place where Emma's explanation reflects the actual data, as fewer than 1% of abortions occur after 21 weeks. And almost all of those involve severe fetal abnormalities or life-threatening risks to the mother, a reality backed by CDC reports and research in the Journal of Maternal Fetal and Neonatal Medicine, showing that claims about needing political guardrails simply don't hold up because physicians already work under rigorous medical standards and emergency cases don't align with ideological narratives. And when the discussion shifts to how online rhetoric can attract extremist audiences, Emma isn't exaggerating, as groups like the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center have documented how algorithm-driven platforms can unintentionally push viewers toward radical content, especially when hosts present stories in ways that reinforce conspiratorial thinking, which doesn't mean the creator wants extremists as followers, but it does show that patterns matter and responsible platforms acknowledge this instead of dismissing it. And Emma's arguments throughout aren't emotional reactions, but reflections of evidence, expert consensus, and what actually keeps people safe.